As quiet farm towns go, Hastings, Nebraska offers just the right mix of wide open spaces and good-to-know-you neighbors. And at its well-manicured country club, as a parade of cars made their way in, we noticed something particularly familiar. From the license plates in the parking lot, to the handbags, to this long guest list.
There you are.
It became very clear that everyone here is on a first-name basis.
My name's Betty. I know, my name is Betty, too.
For 16 years, the Bettys of Nebraska have assembled like this to celebrate the simplicity of their name.
You have to prove you're a Betty? Do you have to show your driver's license?
No.
Birth certificate?
No.
Name tags here seem more a formality than a necessity.
All I gotta say is, hi, Betty.
They have nothing in common, really,
How many people here were actually born Betty?
except their old-fashioned name, or nickname in some cases.
I wasn't really born a Betty.
You weren't?
No, I'm an Elizabeth.
Are you revealing this for the first time on national television?
Kind of.
Betty Crampton emceed the event, which she admits can be, well, a bit confusing.
So what happens when you shout Betty in a room like this?
Oh, it's worse than yelling fire.
The jokes are unending.
Hello, everybody.
Even the grandsons of two different Bettys couldn't resist reworking a few popular lyrics.
Betty, Betty, you guys can sing along. Oh no, we gotta go.
And they weren't the only ones singing.
Betty, Betty, she's a star. How we wonder who you are.
What's a Betty Club without a Betty Club theme song?
She will laugh and she will shine.
It may look like a boatload of Bettys, 70 that register. But the truth is, Bettys are an endangered species. In the 1920s and 30s, Betty was one of the most popular baby names in America. In the decades that followed, there were Bettys everywhere. Betty Grable, Betty Davis, Betty White, Betty Ford. There were even fictional Bettys, Betty Rubble, Betty Boop. Not to mention that one Betty who lived in everyone's kitchen cabinet.
I'm Betty Crocker, and I promise you a perfect cake every time you bake.
Everyone, it seems, has an Aunt Betty. In fact, this is my Aunt Betty in Cape Cod. But somewhere along the line, the name Betty went out of favor. Even Bettys stopped using Betty for anything.
Dog named Betty? Fish named Betty?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing. See, I'm not even carrying on the tradition myself, so.
Which is why there are now far more Bettys celebrating birthdays in their 80s than in their 50s.
We lost one of our Bettys just a month ago.
And why the chapter updates are sometimes filled with Bettys who are no longer here.
And we've lost a couple of members over the last couple of years.
She was the wind beneath our wings. I really miss her.
We haven't found any new Bettys anywhere.
At 88, Betty Kopetka is one of the oldest Bettys here, but tries to keep spirits high.
I usually get a door prize, so that's okay.
She remembers a time when her name meant something a little extra.
When somebody said you're a real Betty, that was a compliment, right?
Yes, right, it really was.
What did it mean back in the 20s or 30s?
You're hot.
That was news to the younger Betty, sitting right beside her.
So did you know that you were supposed to be hot?
No, I did not. That's very interesting. I'm going to tell my husband.
The Nebraska Bettys, though, didn't just happen by accident.
This is how it all started?
Yes.
The first Betty Club was started by Betty Kruger back in 1994, when she placed a want ad in the local paper.
To anyone named Betty or who goes by the name of Betty, would you like to meet other Bettys?
See?
It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
One Betty told another Betty, and soon they had a Betty Club.
Here's the first meeting.
That's the very first one, huh?
Mm-hmm.
There are now more than a dozen local chapters. Even Nebraska's governor has recognized the Bettys.
The 28th of April in 2001, he declared that as Betty Day.
Betty Day? Is that a bank holiday?
It should be, shouldn't it?
Say Betty.
While their ranks may be shrinking, the Bettys are hardly going quietly.
If you're Betty and you know it, shake your booty.
Do you think the name Betty will make a comeback?
I really doubt it at this point. It'd be nice if it would, but I kind of doubt it.
Goodbye, Betty's. We're sorry to see you go. Bye-bye.
We are too, Bettys. Each and every one of you. Bye, Bettys.
See you on the TV.